So Nathan wouldn't let us film outside again yesterday. We'll never know why. But Auburn falls 70-65 here in Nashville. Here with Nashville Nate. Nathan, they lose the semifinal game. I think we both still feel like they're going to be the number 1 overall seed no matter what. But first, your instant impressions from today's game.
All right. I guess you really did actually intro there. I thought you were gonna mess with me, but Patrick actually did bring us in. Yeah, I mean, look, we knew this was going to be a Final Four caliber game. Saturday, finish to the SEC tournament. I mean, it kind of unbelievable how good these 4 teams are, and for this to be one of probably the best tournament semifinals for a conference setting, maybe ever. Probably top 4 of the top 6 or 7, maybe 8 seeds in tomorrow's Selection Sunday. Yeah, I mean, look, Auburn came out, I thought, played really well in the first half offensively. Both of these teams got off to a very surprising start considering how poorly they played on offense, how well these 2 defenses played. In the first game, the halftime score of the first game was 22-20. They surpassed that in maybe 10 minutes of game time, maybe a little bit more. But it was a big Tennessee run there in the second half that I thought was really key. You hate not to boil it down to, and Bruce Pearl said it after the game, like, you're not going to blame stuff on officiating, but you can blame it on free throws. You can say fouls were a big part of it. I thought Tennessee getting into the bonus, Auburn having that foul trouble there at the beginning of the second half was really key, because then that opened the door. Tennessee wasn't really making shots at the time. They were just kind of lulling back and forth. All of a sudden, you build a little bit of a lead at the foul line. Then when you do start playing better, all of a sudden it's a 12-point game. And so I thought that's what Tennessee needed to ignite in the second half. But the impression from Auburn is that, look, they didn't give up in this game. I mean, their rally there toward the end was crazy. I'm not sure I've ever seen a 10-0 run over the span of 158 of game time. I mean, it was crazy how fast they made that happen. A couple 3-pointers in there, 3 Tennessee turnovers in the span of just 2 minutes of game time, and Auburn was right back into it. It was a 2-point game down the stretch, but as Auburn said after the game, I mean, lots of missed opportunities in this one, Patrick. I think they felt like they should have had a few chances to win the game. A good look for Janai Broome under the basket. He catches it up top, misses the putback, but he gets fouled on it, and then he goes 0 for 2 from the free throw line. And so, this is a game that I think if you had won, if you were Auburn, maybe you wouldn't have said you played a very pretty game, but you beat a really, really good team. So I think on the flip side, when you lose close, you shouldn't necessarily say that you struggled that much in any one area. I think just a lot of little things piled up for Auburn in this game.
Yeah, and like you said, I think they had every opportunity to win at the end. I mean, getting the ball back when they got Zakai Ziegler down in this corner, literally right over there. And so, yeah, they had their chances. For me, it goes back to the free throws. Of course, you make your free throws in other spots, it could change parts of the game. But, yeah, I mean, when Tennessee makes more free throws than you attempt, they made 25 of 27, Auburn attempted 22, I believe is the number.
Yes.
You're going to struggle to win. And you kind of saw Tennessee do what Alabama has done and some other teams have done and had success of, when Auburn locks them down. Tennessee comes out making a bunch of threes. Auburn kind of then locks down the perimeter, but then how many times did Zakai Ziegler or others just drive right in? And we've kind of seen that be when Auburn has lost, that's where teams have had success.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly the Alabama 52 points in the paint type game, but it was, and Bruce Pearl said it after they played Alabama as well, saying, look, I know people talk about how many free throws Alabama shoots, but they do that because they just go downhill and they're able to get in the paint so often. There was the effect of that today for Auburn, but also it was sort of a death by non-shooting fouls for Auburn, because once Tennessee got into the bonus with less than 14 minutes left in the game, a full 13 plus minutes remaining, every little ticky-tacky foul call. And I will say it started playing to both sides. You really can't. I thought the officiating was really bad. I thought it was bad for both teams. They just kind of slowed things down, started calling stuff they weren't calling at the beginning of the game. But that started to benefit Tennessee more because they were already in the bonus. Somebody getting picked up at half court and kind of putting their hands back, and that being called a touch foul all of a sudden. And again, credit to Tennessee, they shot the ball so well from the foul line that all of a sudden becomes an easy scoring opportunity for them. Yeah, Janai Broome, I thought was, he was Auburn's best player today, and you don't necessarily put a loss on him because Auburn's nowhere near that position without him having 23 points in this game. But he did go 5 of 12 from the foul line. That's something that kind of stung for them. But at the end of the game, Patrick, even other than the free throws, Auburn had opportunities to cut it down. Overall, they missed 6 of their last 7 shots in the game. 4 of those were 3-pointers. I think 3 of those 4 3-pointers were pretty decent. I mean, the kick out to Chad Begum-Azar after the offensive rebound at the end was a really, really decent look that, look, Bruce Pearl said it after the game, you know, if some of those extra shots go down, you're probably talking about a different result. You're probably not putting so much concern on it, and you know, Auburn has made a lot of those shots throughout the season, but at the same time, when you're playing a team with the defensive intensity of Tennessee, talked to Denver Jones about it after the game, like, you get tired. You get tired having to play defense so hard. You get tired having to work so hard to get shots that all of a sudden, and Philip brought it up after the game, is like, all of a sudden when you're open, but you've been pressured all game and you've been taking hits all game, all of a sudden the open shot doesn't feel as easy. You're almost surprised that you're open, and so I thought that, you know, sort of wore on Auburn over the course of the game. And look, they didn't have the Miles Kelly 3-pointer that they had in the first game. They weren't able to get a breakthrough shot like that, like they did in that first game. And look, they've done that so many other times this season, but it does sting a little bit right now because against Tennessee and against Alabama last weekend, recency, you weren't able to get those kill shots and deliver the big punch at the end like you're used to doing this season.
Well, and that's the thing we literally said yesterday. If the Miles Kelly 3 doesn't fall, you remember that game very differently.
You lose.
And that's basically what happened today in some sort of fashion. But you talked about that defense. The two teams made 6 3-pointers like a couple minutes into the game. They made 7 the entire first matchup, but then from there on out, they ended up just shooting 4 for 28 the rest of the way from deep. And it's like that was kind of the defense you said, like, they were both fresh, but then they had both played yesterday. They were playing such good defense against each other, and it just
started to set in.
Started to set in.
Yeah, and Denver Jones said it as well after the game. He said, you know, that he said almost that first game is a little tougher to get rolling because both teams are kind of fresh, and then in this one, like you said, that fatigue just kind of sets in. You come out, you're excited, great crowd. On both ends. I thought probably a 50-50 crowd, which really surprised me. Maybe by the end of it, I think I would maybe lean a little bit more Tennessee, but still, I mean, look, the last time they met on this floor was that 2019 title game, and I remember thinking, I mean, this is a Tennessee home game. Like, it's not even close. Auburn had a little contingent behind the bench. That was not the case today. So both teams kind of played with the energy there at the beginning. And so Auburn's time in Nashville is over after one win. They are not going to make it to the title game on Sunday. That will be Florida facing off against Tennessee after. I mean, it was a really, really good game for the first half, and just like, you know, Auburn-Tennessee was a great game the whole way through. Second half, Florida just absolutely took it to Alabama. Certainly playing like one of the best teams in the country right now. Speaking of the best teams in the country, Selection Sunday tomorrow night. Patrick, obviously, Auburn is going to find out where they are going. Obviously, Lexington is 99% done. I would go as far to say 100% done. It's been that way for 3 weeks. The bigger question mark is the regional. Whether Auburn is the number 1 overall seed. You and I have been talking, you know, I tend to think it doesn't really matter because the thought process has been that even if Duke was number 1 overall, they would take Newark because they have kind of a big alumni base. They've got a lot of support up in New Jersey historically. But Patrick, as some Auburn players were talking about after this game, you know, they've lost some of these games recently, but you look at the teams they've lost to, these are top 2, top 3 seeds in the NCAA Tournament. Is Auburn playing their best? No, they are not playing their best right now. But these teams you're losing to, you're not going to see that caliber of opponent, definitely, until the second weekend. And so Bruce Pearl was asked about it after the game, whether it's time for the panic button. And his response was pretty tremendous. Go back and go find that video if you haven't. The press conference up on our YouTube channel. But we will see tomorrow night, Patrick, what their NCAA tournament field looks like. But obviously we know they're squarely in the one line. The only question is if they're number 1 overall.
Yeah, I think, and this sport definitely suffers from people that start to pay attention to it March 1st versus, you know, the entire season. And so when you hear Auburn's number 1 and then you turn on the TV and it's like, oh, they've lost their last 4, it's like, well, maybe they aren't the number 1 overall seed. Maybe they aren't as good. Of course, when you look at their resume and you've seen what they've done the whole season, and I think the committee does a pretty decent job of saying that Houston win counts as much as
this loss.
If they had won today,
right.
Like it's the same thing. And so I don't think the recency bias plays into it that much. We saw that last year. They won the tournament here, and we're out in Spokane, Washington, as a 4 seed. So it's like I just like. They've been the number 1 overall seed. I don't think someone's done anything. Like, I don't think Duke's done something to like change your mind. And obviously, like, they just don't have the quality of schedule that Auburn has. And so I think it's locked up. But I think at the same time, you can say Auburn is still the number 1 overall seed. They're probably still the favorite to win the national championship, and they're also not playing their best. Like, they still have things to work on. They're not firing on all cylinders.
Yeah.
And so I think it's like a both and. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like, I think you did what you had to do, which was win one game here. Of course, you want to win the whole thing. I don't know how they would have done against Florida tomorrow. Florida seems like they're firing on all cylinders.
Yep.
But they got their win. Now they get to go home, and they'll likely travel to Lexington.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a short turnaround regardless of if you had been able to advance to Sunday, regardless of what your schedule had looked like. I imagine they're going to go to, they've got practice in Lexington. But again, we're assuming right now, but that's pretty much 100% done. We've known that forever. Talking about Auburn moving into the NCAA tournament now, that second weekend, you and I have talked about it a bunch of times. I just think it's so important for them to just, even if they're not playing their best, find a way to just get out of the first weekend.
Yes.
Because playing in Atlanta in the second weekend, I mean, it's just going to be from a home game and crowd advantage. Yes, you have 10,000 plus Auburn fans and the biggest alumni base for a city in the country, but just comfortability as well, of like not having to travel to Spokane, not having to travel. I mean, Lexington's 8.5 hours. Like, it's not easy as well, being able to go right up the road to Atlanta. But yeah, Patrick, this Auburn team is in an interesting position. We've seen lots of different flavors of Auburn teams in the postseason. You've seen the team that obviously won here and then took that all the way to the Final Four. You've seen teams that have kind of petered down the stretch, and that showed up in March Madness. You saw last year where it made the least amount of sense. It was that you looked so good at the end of the season, and then things just kind of imploded all of a sudden, and you lost to the biggest upset, one of the biggest upsets of the tournament last year. This team is really unique right now because I wouldn't say they look bad. They played well.
They were a missed shot from winning and going to the championship game, and so it's like this weird we've seen them all season, and so what they're capable of.
Sure, yeah.
And we've seen the high, and so maybe that negates it. But it's also they are really good, and it's not like they in all of their losses they've been in every game. Not really the Florida game, that got closer at the end. But in everything else, it's like, okay, if Mark Sears, let's say if Janai Broome hits the shot against Alabama and Chad makes the shot here today, everyone has this way different outlook on where the team is right now.
Sure.
And so it's within that, I still think they're the favorite to win the national championship, but at the same time, they're not playing their best.
Yeah. It's a unique position to be in, and I think you and I would both agree. We were talking about this earlier. It's yes, you have it's good to play it's good to play a high level defensive game, and against Ole Miss, it's good to win with defense. I agree with that. I also think, hey, wouldn't it have been awesome to go out and win by 25 points? Yeah. Do you think Florida wanted to win a grinded out game today? No, they were happy to win by 20 plus or whatever the result of that game was. But yeah, I mean, it's so different from teams we've seen in the past because you still feel like their potential is through the roof. I don't know whether you even play the motivation fire at the end of the season thing anymore. I'm not even sure if that's the case right now because it is such a hard reset button for the NCAA tournament. But there is, maybe if you want to look at glass half full, there is the upside. First of all, talk about upside a lot of being able to nitpick some things, having lost some games. Obviously, you don't want to be having lost 3 of your last 4 games going into the NCAA tournament. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think we know the potential of this team. We know how high they can soar. And look, they're battle tested better than anyone else. They've had wins and they've had losses against some of the best teams in the country. Now it's about, can you find that? Can you find that rhythm? Can you find the best level you've played? My thing is, though, if they find that best level they've played this season, they're going to the Final Four. If they if they hover around this area right now, I still think they can make the second weekend playing this.
And I just think at the end of the day, you talk about the reset button, it's at the end of the day, Dylan Cardwell said it, it's if they lose again, the season is over. And that's true for Auburn, who lost today. That's true who wins this championship tomorrow. It's true for everyone.
Literally everyone.
At that point, the reset is none. We all season, it's we talked about the quad one. We talked about how to win the games, the style points, building your whole resume. And it's the second you get into it, all that helps you get to the spot you're in and the path you'll have. But none of it matters anymore. It's can you just win? If Auburn wins every game by 1 point, they'll win the national championship.
Yeah.
It's and that's just how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, you look at no further than the Final Four team in 2019. should not have won their
The
first
first
game
game,
against
yeah.
New Mexico State. I mean, they are missed free throws away. It was one of the first times in my life I'd ever seen an airballed corner three-pointer from New Mexico State when he was completely wide open that went beside the basket instead of in front of the basket. And so, yeah, it's those little margins this time of year. But I do think, again, from a glass half full perspective, you can look at it as having these adjustments that you need to make this time of year. But at the same time, Patrick, like, the things Auburn thought it needed to work on, I thought they were fine today. I don't remember the rebounding margin, if you do. I don't think it was steep. Like, I don't off the top of my head,
I
remember
believe
Tennessee, like,
Florida
killing
won.
Tennessee.
Or Tennessee.
I don't think they got killed on the glass in this game.
35-27, Tennessee.
Not great.
Offensive rebounds, Tennessee only had one more, 10-9.
Yeah, and then, but mostly I think this was just a physicality sort of thing, and I don't really think they got out physical.
No, I don't think that was
in this
it.
game.
Now, what are your thoughts on Florida led bench points 25-3? Did you have any thoughts on? Or yeah, Tennessee did. Did you think like the bench was necessarily a problem? I know Tahad didn't have a great day.
I think free throws and bench shooting, or free throw shooting and bench production, were kind of the two holdbacks for Auburn today. And look, we knew what this matchup would look like for Tahad Pettiford, who had an 0 of 8 performance today. Auburn's point guards combined to shoot 1 of 14. That, like, I mean, the fact that they had an opportunity to win the game toward the end is kind of crazy, considering how bad they were offensively. This is a really bad matchup for Tahad Pettiford. Like, Tennessee was like this in the first meeting, but at the same time, what I was talking about with somebody afterwards is like, yeah, you could say, oh man, physical backcourt defense. That's really gonna be tough for Tahad Pettiford to solve.
How many teams can do that?
Well, and also the Tahad Pettiford, who had 21 points when they played Houston, and was one of the reasons they won the game. And so this is not. It's all about totality. I saw somebody saying, "Oh, Tahad Pettiford's been consistent all season long. It sucked for him not to show up." It's like he was in a 5 or 6 game slump before the month of March started. And so it's like you have to look at the full body work here. And for Tahad Pettiford, like this trip to Nashville was an anomaly for him to not have been super productive offensively because he had been incredible in their 3 games in March. And so, yeah, I mean, look, him and Cheney Johnson, it's X factor time of year. Yep. I thought Auburn's starting group played pretty decent today. Obviously, you would have liked Denver Jones to do a little better. Miles Kelly had some moments. He was in foul trouble. As we go back to the fouls, Bruce Pearl said that was one of the most important factors of the entire game, by the way, because he said Miles Kelly's perimeter defense was so important. Around the time he picked up that 4th foul, Tennessee went on that big run offensively. And so, again, you and I talked about it, having this full lineup available. Denver Jones is starting to get healthier. Something that takes your lineup out is when you get into foul trouble. And so they're obviously hoping that that slate will be clean. They'll be able to have their full lineup for as many games and as much time as possible in the tournament. So it's time, Patrick, now for Selection Sunday tomorrow night. I don't even know off the top of my head what time it is.
It's at 5 Central on CBS. Shout out our boss, Young Sheldon.
Young Sheldon's not on anymore. We have to shout out George and Mandy's first marriage.
That's so
yeah, so it's like Patrick said, everything to this point has led to this for Auburn, possible coronation as the number 1 overall seed in the tournament. Regardless, they will be a 1 seed for the first time since that 1999 team, and so their path will be advantageous. But they know they have to play better to make it. Number 1, to make it to the second weekend. Those 8-9 teams this year. The field is just tremendous this year, by the way. Like, sitting around, if you just want to like talk ball with people, it's like, oh, this team's got a chance. Oh man, like Michigan State, oh St. John's, and then you look at the 8-9 teams, like, oh, if this team gets hot. I mean, it really is a tremendous field this year. It is going to take Auburn's best, and it's going to take that veteran experience to try to turn it around this time of year. Again, don't think they've been playing poorly. Like Bruce Pearl said, it's laughable to say that there's any sort of panic right now because you have lost to so many good teams, but at the same time, you'd rather beat those good teams, and you're going to face a lot of good teams in the NCAA tournament. So it's time for Auburn to turn in that next gear and try to make good on what was a tremendous season. Try to make a deep run in March Madness. But their SEC tournament trip ends today with a 70-65 loss to Tennessee, and we'll be right back at you guys later this week. Both of us will be in Lexington. Again, we assume 99% of the way there that it will be Lexington, and we'll see what Auburn has to offer and what its first opponents on the 8-9 line will be as well. So for Patrick Bingham, I'm Nathan King. Thank you guys so much for joining us here on the Postgame Pod. Hopefully it wasn't too sporadic. Probably time to get out since they're testing the stage behind us. So thank you guys so much for joining us. Head over to auburnundercover.com. Keep it locked there. You have anything else to say?
I couldn't think of anything. I kind of got all my jokes out in the